Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools podcast. I'm your host, Jeff. Episode, I believe, 27. 2 weeks to the NFL season, so who better to break down more of the divisions with than Richie Forbags? How we feeling today, champ?
Feeling good, off work. Currently a teacher, but we work on 4-day work weeks in the district I'm in. So every Friday is I'm off, and I love it. So, side note though, big day. Maybe not a big day, but it is Kobe Bryant's birthday. R.I.P. the GOAT.
Happy birthday, Kobe. RIP. We miss you. Just that Mamba mentality too. Just you see it in certain players. Like Jordan had that mentality. Brady obviously had it, and I'm wondering if like you see a Mahomes. Like we're seeing more and more documentaries out now in this day and age, and you wonder if guys like Mahomes have that same mentality. And I think they do, obviously based off of like the fourth quarter comebacks and stuff.
That's a great question, right? So it's like he kind of coined after he retired, like or as he was getting close to retiring, he kind of started this Mamba mentality like thing, and he kind of started really pushing it as like the psychological aspect of sports, right? Like take away the physical and now look at like the mental side of it. And it's like that's a great question. Now, like NFL terms, like who do we think those players are that have the Mamba mentality? Like who are those people that are out there fucking grinding nonstop and they're just cold blooded killers? And that's a great question. Is that Mahomes?
I mean,
I
because he
don't I
seems
don't
like he's a
know.
nice. I think his is just he's so ultra talented, and it's something that we've never seen that he can make things happen. Whereas like Joe Burrow would be the other guy I would probably put into that category as of right now, just because you've seen what he does since 2019, that natty champ run, where literally ice in the veins, just straight up was driving down the field. Nobody could stop him. And, essentially after he got his boy Jamar Chase, he kind of proved it right there that he is that dude. And, listening to a lot of his interviews too, he is that, he has that mindset where it's like things are
Does.
coming easier to him because he put so much work in, where it's like, let me try to like do what's within my talent level, where he's not a big runner, but, he might do something differently on the, off the field with his group.
Sure. And I think that maybe that's going to be, now that we've like spoke it into podcast existence, like maybe let's take note throughout the season who we see having that mentality, because undoubtedly it was Brady, right? We knew that he had that mentality. But has anybody actually matched the intensity of Brady since he's left the league? Nobody, in my opinion. But something to look forward to or watch this season.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw the dark horse out there. I'm gonna go with CJ Stroud.
Oh, I like it. I like it. It's a
That'll
little
be
too
my
early to
dark.
say, but we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll just be like the dark horse, just because based off of what I've seen him put in the work too, and just like his overall demeanor kind of gives me that. But he's not as fiery. I want to see someone that's like, kind of not yelling on the field, but like will chew somebody out if need be, and has
Yeah.
that mentality to do it. So it comes with the veteran status too. So you look out for Burrow.
Definitely does.
We
Yes.
got the bad man back this year too. So with Rogers. So
That could have been one. That's a great one actually. He has the potential to have that mentality, but unfortunately, the accolades don't match up. Like MVPs are great, bro.
I
Team
know.
sport. Sorry.
I'm with you on that one 100%. And with the team that Rogers does have now, if he puts it even a quarter of an MVP season, the Jets are going like 11-5 at worst, and that's
Facts.
pushing it. And just based off of what I've seen in camp, and I know camp kind of doesn't mean a whole lot, but he's been working a lot with Garrett Wilson as well, where I've seen him kind of not jawing at each other, but like being like working on plays and just like kind of like really chatting, and you see it get not super heated, but like you can tell it's not just like, oh, we'll work on this, I'm going to listen to it. It's more back and forth, which is good. I like to see that out of my
Because it brings the fire and the passion out of the players when like those interactions happen in a very meaningful, positive way, right? They're not just bickering, like it's in loot, or it's like the whole idea is to get better from it. So like, yeah, if you're seeing that, then we got some good things going on in Jets camp.
Absolutely. But moving on to obviously the big topic is, we're just going to go through some of the divisions, give it a little preview. We do have some of the over unders to look at, in addition to like who we're going to pick for the division winner. Some of them are going to be super easy. But let's start off with the AFC West. We have the Chiefs over unders at 11.5. They brought in Hollywood Brown, drafted Xavier Worthy, and they lost Legarius Sneed this offseason, and Donovan Smith are the kind of big takeaways from those in the addition subtraction area. Overall, the Chiefs got better. I don't care what
Sure.
anybody says. They got better. They won a Super Bowl with a limited offense. Like what Mahomes was throwing to last year was abysmal outside of Travis Kelce. Let's be honest.
Yep.
Isaiah Pacheco really broke out and showed that he can be that workhorse. And the defense is nasty. As long as they have Spagnola, I believe that's who their D coordinator is. I mean, he just draws up. He's a I don't want to say a songbird of his generation, but he's just one of those like defensive guys that, maybe not as a great head coach, but defensive coordinator, he's going to, bring the heat.
Yeah, and I think for the line being at 11.5, they're gonna go over that.
Yeah.
I think with the additions, in my honest opinion, I really don't care about Hollywood Brown. I think he's a nice addition. That's great. They still retained Kadarius Toney. So like I don't know what's really going on in Chiefs
Right.
with their wide receiver core, but the big one is going to be Xavier Worthy because if you watched him at Texas last year, you know what he can do. And if you start seeing some of these highlights coming out of camp, like Mahomes is already bombing the ball fucking deep to him. So, like, I expect that to
Yeah.
be kind of like, if not, this could be the new Tyreek Hill. Speed matches up,
Yeah.
size doesn't necessarily match up because Tyreek's just a fucking brick shithouse.
Yeah, he is.
Um, but overall, Chiefs got better. They're going to go over 11.5. The repeat is very possible, or the three-peat, excuse me. The three-peat
Yeah.
is very possible because when you have number 15 behind center, like at this point, it's like when you had number 12 behind center, anything's possible.
Yep. I agree with everything you just said too. The only thing that would hurt them is like, the wide receivers don't translate over to or Travis Kelsey's takes that step back that everybody keeps waiting to happen at his age. But, money just keeps rolling with them.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Xavier Worthy does look really good as well. But moving on, just to the overall competition in the division, we got the Chargers with 8.5 over under. They brought in Joe Alt. They drafted him pretty highly. DJ Chark at wide receiver, Gus Edwards and Dobbins at running back. Their key losses: Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Corey Linsley, I think retired due to the concussions or just overall, he's been in the league quite a while.
Yeah.
When I look at the Chargers, you basically gutted everything you had offensively for Justin Herbert, but you did get the addition, and I should have put this in the thing.
Lad McConkey.
Lad McConkey is an addition as well. But you also brought in Jim Harbaugh, so you know that they're going to run the hell out of the ball. It's going to be a transition year until Jim gets all of his guys into the system. But I would expect them to run the hell out of the ball, and Herbert still is an elite QB, and it will translate. But 8.5, I'd take the under on it. But that division is so bad, so you have to figure they might split with everybody but the Chiefs and even be close in a couple of those games too, just because of Herbert, can put up the numbers, but just never closes it out.
Sure, and I'm gonna go with the over 8.5. I'll say they get to 9. Joe Walt's a big addition on the line to help Herbert. DJ Shark, the guy's bouncing around at this point in his career. I don't expect too much out of him. I expect more out of Lad McConkey. Um, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, right? They brought that in just because of exactly what you were saying. Like Jim Harbaugh is gonna run that rock. So those two additions are going to be really nice, and especially if J.K. Dobbins can stay on the football field for the first time in his career, because it's been like what 3 years now.
It's been forever, man. It's a rough being a fantasy owner of this guy.
And so maybe if they could be 1A and 1B, that could be a really nice backfield because the talent's there for both of them. That's for sure. Gus Buzz has been productive in previous years and very consistent, which is probably why he'll be the starter. But if JK finally can stay healthy and show his talent level, like if you watched him play at Ohio State, you know he's good. But unfortunately, not everybody makes that transition. So I'll take the over. I'll take 9 wins. I want to add in one final comment. I do not think Herbert is elite. I think he's good, but he's not in that category yet of elite.
Yeah, I guess when we talk about elite, you talk Mahomes, you talk Allen. You know what? I'll play ball with that comment, but he is on the borderline here.
Sure.
He's like on
Yeah.
the like sixth or seventh QB I would take on my team. Um, Good point. Good point. But moving into the next kind of dumpster fire of the division, and I'm not talking about your Broncos quite yet here, Mister Denver. But I will talk about the Raiders at 6.5. They did bring in Christian Wilkins on defense. Gardner Minshew, love that he still is kicking.
We love
And then
Gardner.
yeah, big Gardner fans on this podcast, and then Brock Bowers, generational talent. Go back to the tight end podcast that we did. We went gaga all over him. I'm pretty sure, if not in the pre-draft one of the podcasts. Safe to say we love Bowers, but they did lose Josh Jacobs and Jimmy Garoppolo. That's kind of the two main ones off of that. They do have another year with their former interim head coach as well. The team really seemed to, if you watch that NFL wide receiver show on Netflix, they seem to rally around that head coach too. Just because I
Antonio
feel,
Pierce.
yeah, thank you. Just because Josh McDaniels is such a dick is the best way to put it, and doesn't know how to run a
He really
football
is.
team.
He's messed up every head coach tenure that he's had has gone so poorly, starting with the Broncos in
Yep.
2010 with the Tebow thing, and that's why he ran back to Belichick to go
Yep.
collect some rings. And but you're completely right.
Do you remember, not to get off topic with it, but do you remember the whole he was going to the Colts, you know, oh, new head coach, and then he was like, psych, I'm going back to the Patriots because they
Yep,
paid him more money. Wild.
yep.
Just looking at the Raiders as a whole, that's a rudderless ship at QB. I love Gardner. We love him, as we said, but he's not your good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback either. He's in the hall of I'm an okay. I can win you a couple ball games, but I'm also going to throw 3 interceptions doing it. The defense is, you got Max Crosby out there, who obviously is a wrecking ball, but you also have to count the division into this. They're not going to win many games. I'm going to take the under with 6.5, just because that's not a team that I see going very far to win games.
I'm also taking the under. So yeah, Gardner's the word is serviceable, right? The word's
Yep.
serviceable. He's a
Yeah.
serviceable quarterback. Especially now with Josh Jacobs is gone. We got Zamir White in the backfield, relatively unproven, and then his backup is Alexander Madison, who looking towards fantasy, very well could take that starting position if Zamir does not produce. And then outside of that, yeah, like hopefully they just pound the rock to Brock Bowers. But they're not going to win many games. So like looking forward to next year's draft, they're probably hopefully going to be in the top 5, and I'm going to guess Carson Beck or Shadir Sanders going to
Yeah.
go. But
100%.
yeah, Raiders.
Yep. Another thumbs down, and this one is close home to you now, is the Broncos. Another Sean Payton season in the books. Last year was his first year over there. Their additions this time was Brandon Jones at safety, and then a couple of QBs to note were Bo Nix, who got the starting job now. So kind of nice that we could, mention that on the podcast, which is good. And then, the key losses was Jerry Jeudy went to Cleveland. They lost their linebacker, Josie Jewell. Russ Wilson's gone. He is, fighting for his life in Pittsburgh. And then, Justin Simmons, I think, is in Atlanta now. So,
Yes.
kind of addition by subtraction. Lost a lot of good players. And, from my perspective, they're going to also run the hell out of the ball. And they could be picking pretty high in the draft, bearing that Bo Nix does show what he did at Oregon wasn't a fluke. 5.5 actually isn't a bad line. I'm actually going to take an over on this one just because I do see Knicks kind of getting the best out of them and Sean Payton working with a good, talented QB again.
Yeah,
It's tough. It's a
I
tough one.
I might put him at 5. That's a good line.
Yeah.
I think I might put him at 5. Um, I mean, I don't even know. There's not much to say. Like Javonte Williams coming off the ACL. Cortland Sutton's kind of waiting for anybody who can actually throw him the football. And it looks like so far that Bo Nix can be that guy. Um, I just don't expect much out of the Broncos this year. I think they still need some work to do in the draft, and that Russell Wilson trade really kind of set them pretty far back.
Yeah.
So I don't think they bode very well this year. And again, like you were just saying, like probably going to have a top 10 pick. And hopefully they get that one right. They get a right player.
Yep. Just to do a division pick, I think I could speak for you on this one as well, but I'm going to take the Chiefs. Easy. On to the next one here. AFC South. This one's a lot more fun, a lot more competitive because honestly, I can see 3 out of the 4 teams in this division having a shot at it. But let's start it off with the bell of the ball with the Texans sitting at 9.5. I'd have to look at their schedule to really judge it, but I could see them taking the over. Just based off of the key additions that they did bring in. They brought in Daniil Hunter from Minnesota. Stephon Diggs, our known bust on our wide receiver show, added to the line. Joe Mixon at running back. He's an upgrade over Damian Pierce.
Oh yeah,
They also brought in Danico Autry from, I think, Tennessee. He was residing. So that
and,
also helps their defense.
and Shire, he was from
Yep.
Tennessee as well.
Yep. So brought in a couple of those guys. Lost Blake Cashman, Millie Collins, and Greenyard, Jonathan Greenyard. But other than that, I mean, they added to the team in another year under CJ Stroud. I mean, you're looking at a very, very competitive team. I think Tank Dell and Nico Collins also will continue to flourish. But I do think that they're going to have to be reminded that there's one ball.
Sure.
I think that's going to be an issue. But I mean, good for people who have CJ Stroud because he's just going to sling it, and I don't think, D'Amico Ryans is going to change anything that they did last year outside of just progress. Continue to build
Yeah,
chemistry.
and I feel like that's like all they can do at this point is just see how we're progressing in practice. Like the pieces are there. You don't need to go searching in the draft next year. Like you have everything you need now. It just depends if Stroud is now going to take that step upward. If Joe Mixon's going to produce at the same level in which he did with the Bengals, well, we know my hot take on Stephon Diggs. I don't think he's going to get too much play. But if you have Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter and that defense stays as good as it was last year, I don't see why they don't win 10, 11 games. But just because it feels like this division is going to be pretty competitive, especially when we move on to the next team. I'm going to give them 9 wins. I'm going to take the under.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Switching it up, but one underrated note too is their secondary is actually pretty nasty with Jalen Petrie and then Derek Stingley.
Nope.
Kind of rounding it out. But moving on to the next team is the Indianapolis Colts, 8.5. They brought in Joe Flacco and they drafted Latia Latu, who actually had a pretty standout game the other night, I think it was last night. Had a couple. I think he had his first sack, and he was actually very noticeable on the field. Their only major subtraction is Zach Moss and Gardner Minshew, but you could add it into addition by subtraction. Anthony Richardson's healthy. Let's see what we can get out of him. With him and Anadai Mitchell, that connection last night in that preseason game looked real. I think they might have gotten a steal of the draft. I think he's going to be what Josh Downs was supposed to be. Was supposed to be a nice compliment to Michael Pittman out of wide receiver U. So we'll see what they end up doing. I do think that Anthony Richardson needs to make sure he stays on the field and kind of stops lowering his shoulder because everybody can actually hit him at the same size. That being said, the Colts are a good team. JT's healthy. there really isn't that overall lingering guy as of right now. And knock on wood, that's gonna like hurt them. Their defense has always been nasty.
Yeah, and thinking about the running back situation, yeah, like they lost Zach Moss, but it's also that was just because he only played because JT was just trying to get his wheels back underneath him, and he certainly did at the tail end of the season. And then looking at wide receivers wise, like the addition of Mitchell. We know Pittman's good. Downs didn't have a bad year last year by any means.
Got hurt.
So I think him in the slot might be a really nice thing. And then the biggest question, it begins and ends with, is Anthony Richardson going to be that top 5 pick, that superstar, all the intangibles, right? We know the 4'4", 40-inch vert, 6'5", 250 pounds, can throw the hell out of the ball. Can he now actually produce in the NFL? Because we don't know. Last year, obviously, with that shoulder, maybe rotator cuff surgery, was it on throwing shoulder?
It
So
was.
we need to figure out how that's going to affect him. I'm sure he's done his PT and physical therapy and he's good to go. But some things just aren't the same after you have a very traumatic injury. So like the questions for me don't necessarily surround like the team. Outside of it just surrounds Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. And he'll be the difference maker, or the X factor, as I like to call it, too, on the field. So we'll see if he takes that
I'm gonna
next step forward.
I'm gonna take the under on that 8.5. I'm gonna give them 7 wins.
See, I will go with the over. I'm going to go with them winning 9 games and winning with that.
Okay.
Moving into the next team, who's kind of like an odd team to me to judge, just based off of their quarterback, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have Trevor Lawrence, and we say this every year. Is he going to take that next step to become an elite quarterback that he was sought out to be, coming out of Clemson, coming out of high school? One of those guys that should have been. They added to the line again. They added to the defense, and they also drafted Brian Thomas Jr. and brought in Gabe Davis to help round out the wide receiver core, replacing Stephen Ridley and, a couple of defensive backs. So they didn't really lose a whole lot, but they got some more offensive power to kind of push Trevor over the threshold of being an elite QB.
Yeah, so the line's at 8.5.
Yep.
Let's go. Oh gosh, it really just depends, right? So like again, these questions, Trevor Lawrence, it's like, all right, number 1 pick. He won like the Elite 11 out of high school. He won the Natty. He won. I don't know if he won the Heisman. I don't think he won the Heisman. Um, but now, yeah, like this is year what 5? This might be year 5, and he's not putting up the numbers that you need to put up. He keeps throwing interceptions.
Right.
And there was a graphic I saw like 2 weeks ago and it showed his numbers and this like unknown player's numbers, and they were very similar in touchdowns, yards, and interceptions up to this point in their careers. And it was fucking Daniel Jones. So now, like, what are we talking about? Like that is not a good person that you want to be getting compared to, Trevor Lawrence. But yes, Calvin Ridley left. They added Brian Thomas Jr., which apparently he seems to be popping off in camp right now.
Yep.
Camp obviously is just one thing, but I believe Christian Kirk is still on the team.
Yep.
So that question for me begins and ends with not the Jags. It's almost like the Colts. It begins and ends with the quarterback. And is he actually going to produce for the 50 million he's getting, or is it 55? I can't remember. But
They're
he's
all
getting
around the same now.
is that's why you can't say people are elite based on like their money they're getting,
Oh no.
because that's a hard line to draw. Jags 8.5 under
Yeah.
8.
Yeah, based off of the other ones I took the over, I have to go with the under on that one as well. Moving into the kind of redheaded stepchild of this division with the Titans. They got a new head coach with Brian Callahan. He's coming in alongside Calvin Ridley. They stole him, and they added to the offensive line, and they got a corner in L'Jarius Sneed. They also brought in Tony Pollard to help replace Derrick Henry's production. Derrick Henry's the main loss. We mentioned earlier that a couple of their defensive players went, elsewhere now. But Derrick Henry is, he was that team. He will continue to be that team until somebody else shows that he's not. how do you replace that production? Tony Pollard and Spears, they really have to stand out, and so does Will Levis. I mean, this is kind of Will Levis's, do or die season. I think that
Yep.
if he doesn't show it, they move on from him next year. There's a decent amount of QBs in this draft that they can go out and get, or a veteran for a stopgap. But it's a weird team. They're at 6.5 for over under. Obviously, I'm going to take the under because I'm not really that fond of them.
I am equally not as fond. I think the only comments I have are going to be for fantasy wise. Maybe Tony Pollard might get some good play. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be relevant. I don't know if Calvin's really going to. It depends on Will Levis. We know he can throw the fuck out of the ball. That's for sure. There's no question about that. Um, Overall, lackluster team. I don't expect much. 4 wins.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we still have that stink from their previous coach, and I think that's why I kind of have the opinion I do. But Brian Callahan is going to change that offense and make sure that they do throw the ball more. So it's not going to be that just, you know, let's see how many times we can hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and then see what we open up from there. So yeah, 4 wins would be accurate for me as well. Moving into the NFC Beast, as we like to call it, starting off with the Commanders. 6.5 is their line. Lots of turnover, lots of new additions coming from all the way up to the ownership. Some of the main ones that they outside of some defensive players, but they brought in Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, Celine Farrell, Dante Fowler, kind of just a whole ragtag bunch of groups, and Christian McCaffrey's brother also,
Yeah.
so that helps. And my tight end sleeper with Ben Sinnott or Senate, whatever we want to call him. Their main loss was Jacoby Brissett, Antonio Gibson, Sam Howell. I am going to, because of JT Daniels, and I know he's a rookie, I really do believe that they will take that next step forward. So I'm going to take the over with the 6.5. Just because I have some faith in JT Daniels to sling it.
Jaden.
What?
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden? Oh, I was calling him JT. Whoops.
There is a JT Daniels though. I think he was a quarterback once upon a
Yeah.
time for USC. Anyway,
Oh, yeah, he was.
that's where you're getting. Yeah, he went. I think he transferred to Rice. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels, bud.
Yeah. Whoops. Well, Jaden Daniels, apologies. Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah. I think with Cliff Kingsbury as their OC as well, it's going to translate.
Yeah. So I mean, the line's at 6.5, and there's all this turnover. These are good additions, right? So, Eckler's a nice, good addition for the Chiefs. Dante Fowler, Clelin Ferrell, who was a top pick. Dante Fowler was a top pick. Bobby Wagner for just leadership purposes and also future Hall of Famer. That team actually could go over 6.5, in my opinion, especially if Jaden keeps looking the way that he's done since he's gotten to Washington. I could see 7, 8 wins, and then like if the team's really producing, maybe 9.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that division too. I mean, you got the Giants and who knows what the Cowboys are, but we'll touch on them later. But yeah, and then scary Terry McLaurin too. He's in a contract year. So and he's
Yep.
kind of the only guy there now to throw to. So we'll see.
And we know how players play with their contract years. They all of a sudden become goddamn all pro players, and then they get their contract. And then
What's funny too is a lot of people will draft for fantasy based off of that too, and it almost always works.
that's not a bad strategy. Yeah.
And it goes into running backs too. Is you want to get your running backs on their rookie deals because as soon as they sign that second contract, the trajectory goes down unless you
Todd Gurley.
Yep.
Zeke.
Exactly. You can just keep going down the line. But moving into the Eagles at 10.5 over under. I'm going to take the over for that one. That one's a pretty easily. You brought in Saquon Barkley. I mean, that's all you need to say. I mean, Saquon Barkley is going to make their team even better. Their secondary was kind of shit, but they kind of addressed that with Cooper DeJean in the draft. And I'm going to butcher his name, but Quinyon Mitchell as well at corner. And then they brought back home CJ Gardner Johnson and Bryce Huff from the Jets as their additions. And, they kind of got rid of some DeAndre Swift and some other players that were just kind of aging out, as we said. But my biggest thing will be, does the tush push work without Jason Kelsey? And can most of these starters stay on the field? Will Jalen Hurts to kind of take that next step and continue this, this run that he's had?
I think so. To be quite honest, I think they'll go way over 10.5. Having Saquon's nice. They added Devin White, great linebacker from that 2019 LSU team. He's been on the Buccaneers for the last couple of years. They just traded for Dogwater, Jahad Donson. Don't expect much out of that.
No.
But he was a former first round pick, so maybe they can get something out of him that the Commanders just couldn't. Also, that was a bad team that he was on. So like that, those
Right.
things play a factor into, the development of talent. So, but yeah, overall, they're going to be fine. Team's going to do well. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. We still got our key players. The prediction is they're probably going to win the division, I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only way that they don't is if that whole Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, conflict that we saw at the
What
end.
is going on with that? Yeah, like,
I think Nick Sirianni's just like, I mean, he's the asshole you want to have on your team, but when he pisses you off, I think it runs its course. But he did bring in Kellen Moore to kind of run the offense. I think him losing both his offense and defensive coordinator last year did play a part in both the defense and offense kind of falling apart. I think they brought in Vic Fangio too to run their defense. But I think it's just a QB coach, conflict, and they said that there was nothing there, but the play kind of showed there was something there. But
sure. Yeah.
Jalen's, I mean, Hurts is healthy for once, so we'll see. But moving into a team that we don't think is going to even touch the 6.5 over under is the Giants. If you've watched any of the Hard Knocks, you can tell that they have no idea what they're doing. They did bring in Brian Burns and they brought in Malik Neighbors. Not even going to waste my time or breath bringing in anyone else. Maybe Devin Singletary. I'll give him a flower because I do kind of like him. But you lost Saquon. That was your team. Their offensive line is putrid. You still have Daniel Jones as your QB. Sure, their defensive line is nasty across the board with Burns, Thibodeau, and I think Tomlinson is their defensive tackle. Whoever their defensive tackle is really
Dexter Lawrence?
Dexter Lawrence. Yeah, I'm thinking of the other guy that played alongside of him too. But yeah, Dexter Lawrence. It's going to be the Malik Neighbors show. He's going to get a majority of their targets and going to be their offense, but probably a lack of touchdowns. You'll probably see him take a Drake London type year with a bunch of receptions, but very little touchdown production. I'm saying this team's going to win 2 games.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't have much to say. They're not going to be very good, as you said. If you watch Hard Knocks, they absolutely did Saquon dirty. They treated him like shit on his way out. They have no idea how to even like get better at this point. Neighbors was a great start, but Daniel Jones is just not it. And to not spend too much time on this, 6.5 is the line, not even close. 2-3 games. Because like again, think about who's in the division and what we just talked about. So they're gonna have to play those teams, and they're probably going to get stopped. So,
yep, easy enough. The Cowboys. I mean, they brought back Zeke Elliott. Their over-under is 9.5. I should have let off with that, but that's fine. They brought in Eric Kendricks and Maurice Liafu. All these names, I'm just terrible with them. Anyway, he's a rookie. They didn't bring in anybody to really make that team better, even though Jerry said, oh, we're going to do this. They can't even side CD Lamb right now. And they have
God, it's pissing me off how they're doing him as equally dirty as like I feel the Giants did to Saquon. Like, pay that fucking man. I don't understand. Everybody's getting their contracts around the league, and CD was wide receiver 1 in fantasy last year.
Yeah.
So like, what are you not? And I know Jerry doesn't go off of fantasy numbers and shit like that, but like, what are you not seeing? Like, this is very clear. I think they came in at 33, and he was like, no, because the top wide receivers are getting like 35, and it's like, dude, why are we arguing over 2 million? I don't understand.
Yeah, and I don't know if I made this argument with you or if it was just with Dan, but I said, Dak is the other discussion too. Before CD even came up with his contract, Do you pay Dak that? I think you have to, because Dak has been a solid QB for you over the last couple of years. He had 1 or 2 years where he was hurt. So his play was obviously down, so you can't judge him off of that. But these top talented players with Lamb, Dak, and who's on defense, Mika Parsons. They're gonna have
Yeah.
to pay him. That's simple as that. And they might have. The problem with the Cowboys is Jerry will never allow them to be rebuilt at all. So they have to pay him. It's as simple as that. Lamb is an elite top 3 wide receiver in the league. Pay the man. I think they will. I think they'll have it done by week 1, just based off everything I'm seeing on ESPN. But we'll see. The 9.5. I mean, if something weird happens and Lamb doesn't play, I would pound the under. I think they'll still hit 10 wins though.
I I do as well. I would take 10 wins. I don't like the running back situation whatsoever.
No.
But that's just something that, to keep an eye on. But
Yep.
well, we'll take 10 wins.
Yep. All right. Now, most of our listeners, very few of them, probably are from this division here, being the NFC North. We've talked at lengths about the Bears and what they've added this offseason, so we'll be quite quick with them. But their over-under is at 9.5. It's doable with their easy schedule this year that they have. They did bring in Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, Caleb Williams, added to the defense with Jonathan Owens. They lost Fields. Okay, cool. That's pretty much it for the additions and subtractions. But I don't think they can win the division. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it.
I'm with you. And 9.5. I don't know. I
I
don't know.
I don't want to
We
be.
have we have great talent. We have great talent. We have great players, but that you need to grow. You need time to grow. Like the Lions didn't just get to where they're at now overnight. Like that took like a couple years of struggling with Jeff Goff and putting it together, and head coach Dan Campbell really believing in his guys. Like you don't do this overnight. And
No.
so 9.5, man, I want to say 8-9 wins.
Yeah, I could see it just based off of their schedule. They can easily pull that out. But a lot has to happen for everything has to go right with that offense for that to happen.
Sure.
Um, you know, I'm going to take the under just because I'm going to be a pessimist about it and say that. Um, what about you? Are you taking the under or over? You said
Eight,
over.
9 wins.
Okay,
Under.
under.
Yep.
I I'm going to take the line. Or we got the Lions at 10.5. I'll take the under on that one as well, just because that division is very, very good. Well, outside of the Vikings because of injury, but that division is very good now with the Packers and Bears being relevant. I could see them splitting the season series. Figuring the Bears took the Lions to the brink last year with Fields, it is possible. They did add a couple corners. No one really worth noting. They added to the line. You have a healthy Jamison Williams out there for once, so
Yeah,
offensive.
I was gonna say that. Yes.
Um, you know, I'm not buying in on Jamison Williams quite yet, especially for fantasy, just because it's a lot of mouths to feed, and the
Sure.
offense still runs through St. Brown. But 10.5, I'm going under for that one.
I'm going over. I'm going to say they win 11, 12 games, and I'm going to say the team chemistry is only going to improve. Jameer Gibbs is going to have a monster season, better than he did last year, probably more catches, I would imagine. And yes, like Jamison Williams, I expect him to do better. A lot of mouths to feed, but we need to remember like his talent level was top 15 pick. Um, yeah, and then tight end Sam Laporta, he's gonna get his. I'm not worried about fantasy. The wins 10.5. I'm going over 11, 12 wins. I think they win the division.
Yeah. Yeah, we forgot to add the other two divisions on who we think will win, but we'll add that after. Next, I'm going with the Packers, 9.5. I'm going the over. I am all aboard that uh, I can't think of his name now. Jordan Love.
Jordan
Thank
Love.
you. Jordan Love, hype train here. He's making these wide receivers that good intangibles, but are they elite? We don't know yet. Look really, really good. And that defense is pretty, stout as it is. They added a couple good rookies with Javon Bullard and Edgerrin Cooper. You brought in Josh Jacobs at running back to replace Aaron Jones. And I would say the loss of David Bakhtiari is huge, but he hasn't really played much in
No,
the last
it's
2 years.
injured.
So that being said, I'm taking the Packers to win that division. Honestly, I think Jordan Love just propels them over the top.
Packers line 9.5. I'm going under. Fuck the Packers. Next.
We got the Vikings at 7.5. This one should be pretty easy. As much as we love Sam Darnold, I'm going the under on them. I think you had a chance with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold to really have this, back and forth. Jordan Addison is hurt on off now with these OTAs/training camp. They did add to the defense. Dallas Turner, uh, Jonathan Greenyard, and they brought in Aaron Jones on at running back. Offense still goes through JJ. I should mention it because there's two JJs on that team now with Justin Jefferson. The offense still goes through him. If he's on the field, they can probably pull out 6 games at best. But I'm going under a 7.5.
Yeah, me too. As much as I want to believe, maybe this is that year that Sam Darnold finally shows why he was the third pick in the draft. Was he
I think
third?
so.
So he finally shows that. Um, but overall, I don't see Aaron Jones doing too much. I think Ty Chandler might take his job eventually.
Yeah.
We know Jettas he's gonna get his. Well, at least I hope he gets his.
Yeah.
But besides that, you know, I'm not expecting much. I was actually much more believing in the hype if JJ was going to start because he did look pretty good in the very limited action we've seen him in. But as the team stands right now, as we talk about this on August 23rd, under 7.5, maybe like 5, 6 wins.
Yeah. And I like Sam Darnold. I think this is the best team he's ever been on with the best coach he's ever been on. So we'll see.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Going back to the AFC South, who are you picking to win that division?
Oh, let me find it again. Texans.
All right. I'm going Colts. And then NFC Beast, who are you taking to win? I think I know already, though.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the Eagles.
Yep. I'm also going to Eagles as well. And we already ran through the NFC North. All right. Moving into the NFC South, we got the Buccaneers at 7.5. Brought back Baker Mayfield. You paid him. Good for you. You got Mr. 1000, Mr. 1K with Mike Evans. Their defense, I don't know really much what to say about them. They lost Devin White, but he wasn't very good when he was there. I don't think he
Yeah.
really wanted to be there. I think they're going to go as far as their defense will take them, not as much as where Baker will take them, because Baker does keep them in the game. 7.5 in that division. I am going with the over, and I'm not confident in it.
7.5. I'm gonna go 7, so I'm gonna go take the under. I'm happy that they did pay Baker because Baker has since he's gotten to the Buccaneers, when really people thought his career was over. When he got traded to the Rams or maybe let go and then signed with the Rams. I can't exactly remember how that worked out with that Browns. His end of his tenure with the
Yeah,
Browns,
I think he was released. Yeah, or he went
and
to Carolina.
oh, that's right. Jesus.
Yeah,
So like with those moves, I think people thought his career was over, and then he went to the Buccaneers, had some decent years, like individually.
yeah,
So I'm glad they paid him, and then just wide receivers haven't changed. Godwin's, Evans, Kate Otten is going to be remember our dark horse for maybe breaking out this year. Um,
watch McMillan too, that wide receiver out of Washington. He's been having a hot camp, and I think all three of those wide receivers out of Washington are going to really shine. With that being Rome and Jalen Polk as well.
yeah. So by about 7.5, I'm going to take 7 wins. I'm going to take the under.
Okay. Next in line is the Falcons at 9.5. You got Kirk Cousins coming in, Michael Penix to back him up. That's the main one. They didn't really lose anybody worth noting. So they went out and paid AJ Terrell, so that's good for their defense. The question here is, well, because they got the new coach, who's a disciple of Sean McVay, so you got to expect that they're going to run the hell out of the ball. Good for Bijan, and you have to get that guy the ball. I mean, he's the most talented, running back we've seen in years, probably since McCaffrey came out, at least.
It's
And
fair.
you just have to see, keep him involved. You got Kirk, so that's only going to make Drake London and Kyle Pitts finally, take that next step forward. Um, 9.5. I'm going over just based off of kind of who's in that division this year.
Yeah, I think they have all the pieces now. Right, you got your QB, you have your running back that you got last year is an absolute stud. Um, we expect the wide receivers now to do more because of Kirk. Pitts is going to have a good year. The defense, they just got Judon because he didn't want to go to the Bears. But that's okay. You're old anyway, Judon, and we want our third round pick.
Yeah.
And but 9.5, absolutely over division winner as well.
All right, perfect. Moving on to the Saints. I think Dennis Allen's still a coach there. Derek Carr, unfortunately, is still the QB there, but they did bring in the QB1 star, Spencer Rattler. He kind of was a well traveled college player. So I think as of right now, he has been kind of putting Derek Carr to the burners with like challenging him on his throws. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Derek Carr either get hurt or just look like shit, or look like Derek Carr, as we should say. Sorry, Derek, man. I was
We're
really
out here just roasting people.
and I liked him when he initially was with the Raiders, and then it just went downhill because I think his arm's just dead. That being said, they got Rattler in there. They're at 7.5 for wins. You lost famous Jameis and Michael Thomas from that team. They're also in cap hell. Team's getting older. Still have Kamara though. Under 7.5 wins. I'm thinking they win like 5 games.
I'm gonna take under, but I'm gonna say seven wins.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, I just don't think they put it together anymore this year. I think that's just a team.
Yeah,
Moving into the Panthers, kind of an exciting team with a lot of their turnover. New
sure.
coach, David Canales. Um, he's going to help Bryce Young obviously develop because he look what he did with Baker. They also had a really good draft. They brought in Jonathan Brooks, so whenever he comes in, they went out in free agency, signed a ton of people. Bringing in Jadeveon Clowney on defense, Robert Hunt on the offensive line, Deontay Johnson from Steelers, Josie Jewell, and then obviously they drafted Xavier Legette. But on the defensive line, you lost Brian Burns. So I don't think you can get much worse than 5.5 for the over under. I still think they hit just under that with 5 wins. I think you do see Bryce Young keeping them in games this year. I think because he's got a decent system set up, he can only show what he did at Bama, where he got outside the pocket, kind of made it happen. They could be an exciting team with Bryce Young this year.
Yeah, and so we got to remember he was the number one pick for a reason last year, and so this is going to be the year where I don't know if they necessarily put it together, but I think this is a year that they grow and then they get another good draft pick. And then if that turns out to be like Luther Burden or some other wide receiver who's really good in college right now, that could be maybe a game changer for them looking towards next year. But as it stands at 5.5, I'm going to take the under. Um, but I think they're going to grow as a team. Like Bryce
Yeah.
Young's a great player. He's a
Yeah.
really great player, but you just need that support from obviously staff coaching, developing, and they need to draft right. Maybe Xavier Legette is actually the piece that they needed. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think he might be. He does look like a little Debo Samuel when he be running the ball, so like that looks promising. But overall, I can't say that they're going to win 6 games.
No, I can't either, but I think you're going to see like the turnover of like the bad juju that was on that team last year
Yeah,
completely turn it around. But their owner is awful too, so we'll see.
that guy's a piece of. fucking work.
Yeah, he is. My division winner also is going to be the Falcons. I think this is the year that they put it together. Moving on to my favorite division to watch, other than my own with the NFC or AFC East, is the AFC North. Your Steelers, Browns, Bengals, and Ravens. Start us off with the Steelers. We got 8.5. They brought in Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Patrick Queen on defense. You basically turned over the entire QB room from last year, and you lost Deontay Johnson. They're in talks to get Brandon Ayuk. Is it happening? Is it not happening? I know we've talked about this for the last couple months, and we're sick of hearing about it. So, that QB room's a mess. I do think Justin Fields does win that job, based off of. I mean, Russell Wilson looks terrible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, plain and simple, he does not look very good. Fields looks serviceable, and his athleticism is there. And maybe you never know. Like just need he's a first round talent, and sometimes you just need to change teams, change systems, and then you can pop. Here's my problem: the line's at 8.5.
Yeah,
I'm giving them like 5, 6 wins, like five. We're going to go 5 wins. And then running. I mean, maybe the one thing you could prospectively be happy about is that they're probably going to run the ball a lot with Najee and Jalen Warren. I don't know who ends up as RB1 at the end of the season, but I think that's probably what you have to look forward to.
yeah. I mean, I sit here with the 8.5, and I look at Mike Tomlin's like just overall, career record here. I mean, I think he has like that. Doesn't he have like a record for like most above 500 seasons or something like that?
I don't think he's ever gone under 500 in his career, which is what they keep like dick riding really hard, and that's great and all because like that shows consistency. Don't get me
Right.
wrong, but some of those seasons, like you still didn't make the playoffs or do anything.
Right.
So
They haven't done anything. They haven't been relevant since Big Ben left. I don't think that's going to change
yeah,
this year, even though they did make a lot of good moves this offseason, and their defense is still pretty stout. I'm going to go with like 8 wins on the dot.
okay.
Moving into the Browns, 8.5 there. Brian and Jerry Judy, Devin Bush, Jordan Hicks, famous Jameis, and then they lost Joe Flacco essentially. Will this be the year that Deshaun Watson comes back in and takes it? He's already hurt.
Is he really?
Yeah, his shoulders are there, and he's had him sit out of practice because of his shoulder.
The Michael Jordan of football. Good
Yeah.
job, Dabo Sweeney. Should have never said that.
No. Good defense, elite defense that will keep them in games. I think if Watson is even serviceable for them, they have a good running game. They have a good system, good coach. I think it's Kevin Stefanski, right?
Yep.
Defense carries them. As I like to say, defense wins championships. That's a very defensive minded division. I'm going the under because the next team that we're going to mention is going to be hot. So, are you taking the over under for Browns?
I'm taking the under, and I don't expect much out of the team. The only wonder I have, and this has nothing to do with really anything, it's more fantasy wise, is how's Nick Chubb going to do? How is he going to do after that awful injury? My goodness. But he was in the weight room seen squatting like 600 pounds like 2 months ago. So that guy is just an incredible human. His body is incredible.
Yeah,
Because I think he tore ACLs in at Georgia as well. One of
both.
them.
Yeah, I think
Oh, okay, both.
I'm pretty sure he like tore both of them, or he like tore his ACL at Georgia, and I'm thinking of like his first or second year with like the Browns, he tore it, and then he
Yeah.
just tore it again.
So my wonder is if he's going to put up the same type of production. Has
I
really
mean,
nothing to do with the team. The team's going to be not very great. I'm going to go under as well. We'll say 7 wins.
so I guess for fantasy, I mean, I would try to buy him for like a second and just kind of hope for the best. If
Yeah,
I
he's
have
not he's
Chubb,
not worth a first. Yeah.
no, just because if he was healthy, absolutely worth a first. He is a bell cow back. Problem is
Hmm.
he's not healthy. We don't know when he's coming back. He doesn't know when he's coming back yet. I mean, we're talking like week 7, season could be half over, but I mean, just about half over. I mean, what are you going to get out of him? But they're going to, he's going to play. They paid him enough money to play, so he will be
Yeah.
back at some point, though. This is gonna be my pick to win the division because I'm a huge homer when it comes to Joey B. We're going with the Bengals over 10.5 wins, and I'm already saying it right now. They're going over. You, Joe Burrow is back. I think this is the year he wins the MVP and really shines. This is going to be the year he actually gets by the Browns. He gets by the Ravens. He doesn't have these little hiccups against them. They brought in Zach Moss to replace Joe Mixon, added Trent Brown. And one of my favorite guys, too, is Mike Gesicki. Could this be the year he finally gets,
Sure.
you know, up there in the fantasy rankings as well, being that tight end? But like I said, they lost Mixon, Tyler Boyd, Jonah Williams. Um, but they're pretty young on defense, and still, I think the team is still pretty good.
Yeah, so for the line 10.5, I'll give them just because if you've been listening to Joey B this offseason, that is a man on a mission. I think that's definitely where you were saying at the beginning of the pod, talking about that Mamba mentality. Like everything he's saying is what you want to hear if you're a Bengals fan. Even despite losing Mixon and adding in Moss, which is a downgrade, what we're going to call what it is, it's a downgrade. Um, the way Joey B's talking, I think him and Chase are going to have a very, very flourishing year in terms of numbers for both of them. I think they'll go over 10.5. I'm going to go 11 wins, but I don't think they're going to win the division.
Exactly, exactly. Who do you think is going to win a division?
Well, let's talk about our last team.
All right, we will. One note too: Jamar Chase is holding out of practice too. I think that's going to work itself out too. That's one of
Yeah.
those things that ever since Lev Bell, um, he was the one outlier, and I think the NFLPA since then has made changes where if you don't, you get fined. I think the only person who's going to honestly take that is Hassan Reddick, which he's an idiot for not wanting to join on with the Jets, but that's besides the
Don't
point. I
get
think
it.
we
I
talked
don't
about
get
it
it.
last week or 2 weeks ago anyway with Dan. But back into the AFC North, we got the Ravens. 10.5 wins is their over under. They added in Derrick Henry. I mean, enough said there. They got rid of Odell Beckham, Jadavian Clowney, J.K. Dobbins, Morgan Moses, who went to the Jets. The only reason I'm mentioning him. And they also lost out on Geno Stone and Patrick Queen and the Gus Bus. My one note, I mean, you have the MVP Lamar Jackson for a reason. He will propel that team to wins. Mark Andrews is hopefully healthy. I mean, I know he got into a car accident recently, but he's okay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you got Zay Flowers. I think Rashad Bateman finally takes that step forward. I think if teams play defense against the Ravens, like what we saw the Chiefs do against them in the AFC Championship game, I think there's no reason the Ravens, you know, don't touch their at least over, which I'm going to take their over as well. But I think the Bengals are just better than them this year. I think Joey B is going to come out firing.
Yeah, and so I mean, 10.5. I'm taking them over. I take them over. I take them to win a division. I think we're really underestimating the addition of Derrick Henry because now when we run that option, it's either Lamar's pulling
Yep.
or he's handing it off to Derrick Henry, and like that is a whole different game changer than handing it off to Gus Edwards. It really is. And then Zay Flowers is just absolutely electric. If he can keep up and produce a little bit better than he did last year, and Andrews remains consistent the way he is, I think they should win the division. Now, do I think they'll go to the Super Bowl or very far in the playoffs? No. But I think for that division, it'll be between them and I think they'll win, but the Bengals will be right there.
Yep, absolutely. I could see it too. Not far off.
Yep.
Um, all right, so we just knocked out a bunch. Obviously, go ahead and listen to 2 weeks ago if you wanted to hear the NFC West and AFC East. Just for time purposes, before the season, I want to make sure we bang this out, so we got all those done. I know that's a lot, but real quickly, let's just do our Mount Rushmore of college football players of all time. This could be just your fan favorite, pretty easy. Because I'm a gentleman, I'll let you go first. Who's number one on your list for Mount Rushmore?
Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
I just love Reggie Bush. I loved Reggie Bush. I'm happy he got his Heisman back. And then number two is going to be Johnny Football, and those are my two.
That's it. You don't have
I don't want to hear anybody else. I don't care. Maybe Cam Newton.
All right. Well, so I'll go with mine real quick. You got to go with Bo Jackson out of Auburn. He was just an animal, just super talented. My second one is going to be CMC. What he did at Stanford and being on Stanford's team, being the only one really there, he tore it up. He was so much fun to watch it. During those Pac-12 games. Was he there with Andrew Luck or no?
No.
I didn't think so. So then he was literally there by himself. And then obviously you got to add in.
It was Davis, the backup for Stroud. Davis Mills was the guy, I believe.
That's right. Yep. And if I had to pick a three, you got to go with the other USC Trojan, Marcus Allen, Heisman Trophy winner. Didn't get to watch him play because I'm too young, but still. And then I mean, we mentioned Tim Tebow being in there in that conversation too?
He's got to be. I mean, if you were alive and you were watching Florida Gators football at that time, like he was electric, and it's obviously didn't that throwing motion didn't translate to the NFL, but nonetheless, college wise, absolute tank guy that we talk about with Mamba mentality. Tebow at Florida.
Yep, that's another good one. I guess one more player we have to give his flowers because we mentioned him is Lamar Jackson. Dude was an animal at Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Won the Heisman, did everything he needed to do. So
nobody had ever seen that type of elusivity and just movement from a quarterback since Vic, and he arguably did it better. So
100% he's better, 110%. 2 MVPs, right?
Yeah.
So, we'll close it out there. We got week 0 tomorrow, kicking off with Florida State and Georgia Tech in Dublin. So that'll be fun to watch, and weather's getting a little bit cooler, so I love it because it smells like football outside.
We're back, baby. We're back.
All right, let's close it out there.